Right, well, hello everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining UC Santa Barbara's Preparing the Next Class, our first year / freshman PIQ case studies. So we already did some brief introductions, but I'll just repeat. My name is Itlali. I am one of the freshman admissions counselors here at UCSB. And Adam, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself again for anyone that is just joining us now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Itlali. Hello, folks. My name is Adam Rodriguez. I'm an admissions counselor as well for UC Santa Barbara, and I oversee the territories in the Riverside, San Diego, in the Imperial Valley as well, and a little bit of other states across the U.S. as well. But without further ado, let's jump right in, and then we'll hand it over back to my colleague, Itlali. Sweet. Thank you so much.
All right, before we get started, I do want to give all of you joining us a huge thank you from the whole admissions team. Thank you for constantly collaborating with us. We would not be able to do our job. It was not for all of you supporting your students and guiding them through the process of applying to higher education. So thank you so much for your continuous collaboration from all of us. Up on the screen, you will see our amazing team. We have our executive director, Guga Costa, our assistant director, Devon Edwards, and then you see myself and Adam as one of the freshman admissions counselors, as well as the rest of our amazing team. We hope to continue working with all of you in the future. But for today, we are going to be covering the personal insight questions, how they fit into the UC application. We're going to do a general overview and how you can best guide your students as they work through these PIQs. And finally, we will finish off by reviewing some case studies together. So let's go ahead and get started. So we are going to start with just a general overview of holistic review. So as you all may know, the University of California systems conduct what we call a holistic review. We consider those academic factors, but we also consider non-academic factors such as extracurricular factors and contextual factors. So UC campuses use the same 13 factors to evaluate applications, but we often apply these factors a little differently. So it is to the student's advantage to include as much information as possible on their UC application. So admissions representatives want to know about the student's interests, their experiences, their accomplishments, or any challenges that they might have had. So essentially, we are trying to get an idea of their overall context and what they've accomplished given the opportunities they were given. All the things essentially that make students a great UC applicant. Now, it is important to note that the students are also considered within the context of the applicant pool for each UC campus, so this might vary. Now, within the UC application, students should feel free to discuss their roles and responsibilities, whether it be at work or in community service or at their high school. They can talk about their educational journey and share their interests and passions in order to help us understand this context. Now, the UC Personal Insight Questions is one of the sections that will allow students to share their stories and allow us to review them holistically. So let's dive a little bit into these PIQs. So we are going to just do a very general overview. Essentially, there are 8 total questions in the personal insight questions, but students only have to respond to 4 of these. Each of these responses is limited to 350 words maximum. So it's important to note that all UCs have the same personal insight questions prompts. Okay, all 9 undergraduate campuses are going to have you respond to those same PIQs. Now, all the questions hold equal value. No question gives a student an advantage or disadvantage. The questions are not ranked, they are numbered. Now, as all of you support students in figuring out what questions to respond to, it is important that you guys let the students know to pick the 4 questions that feel the most relevant to their circumstances. This will allow them to give the admissions reader the most information and context about themselves, and it will help us learn about their life experience, which is what we really want to get to know. This is really the student's opportunity to share additional and more detailed information that cannot be found elsewhere in the UC application. This could include something like what circumstances and experiences have shaped their academic or personal experience. Now, admissions staff want to learn what the student did and why, what the student learned, how the student applied what was learned to all aspects of their life. So we like to let students know to think of these not as an essay, but rather an interview on paper. We want to get to know this story. Now you guys will see 2 wonderful QR codes on there. It is the link to the series of 8 questions. We have the English and the Spanish PDF available for all of you and your students. Now, our transfer students also complete the personal insight question sections in the UC application. However, their PIQ requirements look a little bit different, so applicants must respond to 3 of the 7 questions available, but they also have to respond to a mandatory question. So in total, they're also responding to 4 questions, but one of them is mandatory, and we do require students to complete that one. Now, for UCSB specifically, it is important to note that although we do require students to complete the PIQs in our admissions process, our admissions process here at UCSB is a little bit more academic focused. So it is important that students are making sure that they are completing those academic requirements. And now that you guys have a little bit of a better understanding of these personal insight questions, let's talk about advising students through these PIQs. So all of you are likely going to have conversations with students. They are looking to you for advice when it comes to responding to these PIQs. So how can you help navigate this conversation? We recommend you guys advise students to focus on the content of their PIQs rather than the style. So we are not grading their writing style or making sure they have amazing grammar. Sure, having great writing style and grammar will facilitate understanding what the message the student is trying to get across, but we're really focusing in on that content and the information the student is trying to provide us. Now, if a student is struggling with how to start their PIQs, you can remind them that the focus of their responses should be on the influence and the impact. So what do I mean by this? This could be the influence or impact a situation had on the student. Or it could be the opposite, the impact the student had on a situation or an individual. So I'll go ahead and give an example. If a student wants to discuss their involvement in their high school soccer team, let's say, their focus could be on the impact soccer had on their life. Did it impact them in their leadership? Did they become a better leader because of the sport? Or the influence they left on the soccer team. Was the student holding one of the positions in leadership and they were able to attend a tournament or a championship? So this is just one of the examples, but you could apply these differently based on the topic the student is wanting to discuss. Now, the student should also be placing themselves at the center of their prompt. We do not want to hear about the impact or influence of someone else. We want to hear about their own influence, impact. Students should be using those I statements. It could be, I did this, I learned about this, I applied this. It's their opportunity to ensure that we, as admissions counselors or readers, get to know them and not someone else. So remind them that the focus is on them and their story. Now, they can show these things via specific examples, all right? Remind them that these PIQs are kind of like an interview on paper. What would they do in an interview? They would provide these examples. They would provide an example how they impacted or influenced someone or how they went about navigating a situation. However, I do want to note that these examples should be related to their high school experience. We often get students discussing some experience from elementary school, and that's really fine if you connect it back to high school. The focus is on that high school experience. So if they talk about an experience outside of high school, tell them to make sure to connect it to the present time. Okay, we do not want to hear about something impactful from years ago without that connection of high school. Now, as a counselor, some advice we don't encourage you to tell students, we encourage you to stay away from, is telling students that they should write what the UCs want to hear. Why? This might be because it could lead to inauthenticity from our students. They might focus too much on being the perfect student. They forget to share their story and share their voice with us as readers. We want to get to know their personality, their background, and their interests in their own words and in their own unique words. So, very important to them to be very authentic within these prompts. Now, we also recommend you stay away from focusing too much on that writing style and structure. Like I said, it is very important and it facilitates us understanding the message the student is trying to get across, but it's not the center of our PIQs. We are really focusing in on that content. And finally, do not advise students to highlight someone besides themselves in order to give context. We're not saying don't mention someone else. We're just saying don't place that full focus on another character in that student's life. It should always tie back to the student. Now, within the PIQs, there is also a PIQ additional comments section. Now this section is optional. You will see a nice little image of kind of what it looks like when it pops up in that UC application. Now this section is meant for students to give us helpful background information that they were not able to provide anywhere else on their UC application, including their PIQs. Now we provide students with a 550 word maximum for this additional comment section. So you will notice they have more word limit in terms of this versus the PIQ section. Now we do also want to give you guys some advice when it comes to helping and supporting students through this additional comment sections. So as you are talking to students and advising them, we want you to remind them that this section is meant only for new and relevant information. Okay, this could be something like additional context, maybe for a significant responsibility or unique program the student was a part of. This could be something in terms of their family life, a responsibility they have and weren't able to share anywhere else in that UC application. All right. Now, I do want to point out that this is not a section for students to add an additional PIQ. All right. This will not enhance their application if they are just giving us repeated information. Now, this is an optional section. Students do not have to fill it in. It will not negatively impact them if they leave this area blank because it's optional. It is not mandatory. And finally, something I will advise you guys to not advise students is to add links in this section. Okay, we will not go ahead and click those external links as readers. If a student is very passionate about wanting to share, let's say, a website or resume they worked on, they can describe it to us instead of just adding the link and copying and paste it on there. So if they really want us to learn a little bit more about their website, they can just go ahead and describe it. Don't put that link because it won't enhance the application because we won't go ahead and click it. All right. So let's dive into some examples of what students could talk about in this additional comment section. So it could be something academic. Some of the context a student might have to give us could be about the coursework available at their high school. For this example, we listed my school limits AP. This led me to only take the maximum amount of 3 APs. That is great background and context as to what was available to them in terms of their academics. Now, another example is the situation within their classroom. Our class had a constant change of teacher. This caused me to fall behind. Okay, if these are two things the student did not know anywhere else in their UC application, the additional comment section would be the perfect area to do that. Now, there's also non-academic factors that a student can know in order to give us that context that they haven't provided elsewhere. Like I said earlier, that family responsibility. In this example, a student stated, I have the family responsibility of taking care of my younger siblings. This limited my capacity for clubs. And they went on to explain how and why. The student did not note this anywhere else in the UC application, so this was the best way to fit it in and give us that context and that story. Now, another example is related to sports. So funding fell for my sport, and essentially they are letting us know that they were no longer involved, something they weren't able to know anywhere else in the UC application. So these are just some of the examples of how students can go ahead and use this additional comment area. Very important to realize that this is optional, not something mandatory. And if a student doesn't feel the need to use it, that is totally okay. And now I am going to go ahead and pass it over to my lovely colleague, Adam, who is going to be guiding us through some of these wonderful case studies we have prepared for all of you today.
Thank you so much, Silali. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just kind of quick reminder, folks, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the Q&A. My amazing colleague Silali and I will be doing our best to answer them throughout the presentation, but we'll also leave a little bit of time at the end to help answer any questions you may have. Alrighty, and once again, one final reminder, this recording will be made available for all of our registrants today on our YouTube channel, and we'll notify you when it's posted. Alrighty, thank you so much, folks. Now let's talk a little bit more about AI, or artificial intelligence powered transformation. So we understand AI is growing and it's also in the hands of our students. Now, oftentimes we ask ourselves, well, what can we do to prevent our students from using it? Well, in reality, we can't do anything as such because it's already made available and it's very accessible for our students. So when it comes to AI in the PIQ responses, we kind of asked ourselves, well, rather than kind of avoiding it, what can we do to help utilize it as a tool and as a resource? So when it comes to AI and the PIQs, This is a very phenomenal tool to organize thoughts. But one thing we really want to highlight, it should be used as a resource, not the main source. I'll say that one more time. Be used as a resource, not the main source. Because at the end of the day, we want to use this as a resource for brainstorming topics, outlining responses, polishing language, and getting back positive feedback. And keep in mind, when it comes to all of the UC campuses, especially in the PIQs, or not in the PIQs, or in the UC application, there is a statement of application integrity. While we do not specifically check for AI or AI software or prevent students from using it, we will still check for plagiarism. So it could potentially lead to grounds of cancellation for an applicant. But at the end of the day, if we do flag a student for plagiarism, we give them the opportunity to explain themselves as well. But in order to avoid that whole thing, we just want them to be authentic. So when it comes to AI, we asked ourselves, how can we use it as admissions counselors, or what can we do to kind of gain a little bit more insight into how students can utilize it? So therefore, we've created a case study for that, for this example. Silali, next slide, please. Perfect. Thank you. So we created a ChatGPT case study. So we asked ourselves, or in this case, we asked ChatGPT, what are the pros and cons of using it for my UC application PIQ responses? How can I make my responses sound authentic? And ChatGPT got straight to the answer. Great question. Using ChatGPT can help you with your application personal insight questions, can be really effective, but it's really important to approach it thoughtfully. Here's a breakdown of the pros and cons. Sweet. So a few of the pros, it talks about brainstorming, something we already talked about, clarity and organization, polishing language, and multiple drafts quickly. So phenomenal pros and cons insight from ChatGPT. Next, we talk about the cons or the pitfalls to watch out for. Generic tone. ChatGPT drafts may sound polished, but lack personal details or quirks that make your story uniquely yours. Great. Over polishing. If you rely too much on the tool, your voice can get buried under perfection, but perfect, but impersonal phrasing. Ethical concerns. While it's okay to help brainstorming and editing, you should be the one to provide those core stories, insights, and reflections. Phenomenal insight to that, as well as loss of authenticity. ChatGPT can't know the true emotions or stakes or lessons that you've lived through in your PIQ responses. So we've taken all of this feedback from ChatGPT, and ChatGPT also recommended that we support or provide a draft. So that's what we did. So in the next slide, we talk about providing a draft to ChatGPT. So in this case, I wanted to answer question number 2. This question number 2 talks about, well, everyone has a creative side. How do you express your creative side? It can be through problem solving and so forth. Now, we understand this is a little wordy, but just keep in mind, this is a very generic draft that we've created, and it's not an example that a student created. So we're just going to provide that a little bit more insight. So the student talks about how they try to start us off with very much scene setting. Everyone discovers their creativity in a different manner. While I love singing in the shower, I'm not musically inclined. I can doodle with the best, but art is not my forte. My creativity shines through problem solving. Perfect. So that's the question that we're trying to answer. But in this example, we talk about how we toured one of the UC campuses and we found out that all of the UC campuses share one library system. So that's pretty interesting. However, through our creative problem solving, we wanted to know how many books are total in the library system. Yes, we can completely Google this response, but what we did is we provided insight into our thinking. Well, if it's 9 undergraduate UC campuses, 1 graduate school, which is UCSF, we wanted to know what's the approximate total number of library books in the system. So we provided that insight into this draft. So we wanted to give insight into our kind of creative thinking, how we would have solved this, and so forth. So we plugged this draft into ChatGPT to help answer the question and to provide us feedback. So in the next slide, ChatGPT got us very quick insight in very short amount of time. And it also provided very great feedback. So strengths of your draft. You can show creative thinking through your Fermi problem approach. You connect your curiosity to real world moments, such as the UC tours. And then you reveal something personal about how your mind works, not just what you've done. Great feedback. Continuing on, it also provides suggestions to improve authenticity and flow. First one it shares, add a personal hook to the start. And we'll talk about what that looks like later on, but that's just one of the suggestions. The second suggestion provided us include more personal reflection. they say, we like what you did, but you did not talk much about why this matters to you and what you learned. Phenomenal insight. Third is talks about smooth some technical details. The explanation of your estimates is interesting, but don't get too bogged down in numbers. Great insight, and that's something we've shared when we've worked with students in the past. And then last but not least is end with a strong closing note. Right now it ends with, what fun would that have been? Which is cute, but it could land with more reflection. Now, once again, these are just general feedback and suggestions that ChatGPT provided. But something I really want to point out is, once again, ChatGPT is not an exact science. Every single year we recommend and we advise students, as you may know, try not to hook your reader with a personal hook and so forth. We want them to get straight into the question and answer the question as early as possible, so you can still provide that feedback at the end of the day. So huge benefit. But once again, ChatGPT is providing insight into what it would do when providing feedback to a student. So in the next slide, ChatGPT also redrafted our response. And as you may notice, it's a little shorter. So the word count is 191 compared to the 343 that we shared earlier. Now, as you can see, ChatGPT is still providing us with that very storytelling hook. I've never been an artsy type. My doodles stay in the margins and my shower singing is strictly off stage. But give me a tricky question and that's where I light up. This past spring, while touring several UC campuses, one detail struck out with me. All UC libraries are connected in a single system. So as you can see, still providing that insight. So when you read this redraft, I also ask all of you, what are your thoughts? I'm actually going to open the chat to see what insight y'all would like to provide with all of us today. So I'll open the chat just for a brief minute so we can learn a little bit more about what you think. So here's some guiding questions. What are your thoughts? What did it do well? What didn't it do well? Next one is, did it answer the question? Is there room for improvement? And last but not least, is it relevant to the student? So I'll open up the chat right now to see if we can gain any insight from all of you, since you've worked with so many students already when drafting a response. Is this ChatGPT redraft something that you would recommend a student to submit? So we'll just wait for maybe one or two responses, but we'll continue on into our main bread and butter, which is our PIQ case studies. Sweet. All righty. Don't see any responses, so what we'll do, oh, perfect. Yes, a few folks already shared the voice feels fake. Nope, not enough about them, too much about the campuses. It highlights the thought pattern, but doesn't talk about all the impact. Yes, phenomenal. I think this is a terrible PIQ. Phenomenal, thank you so much. The entire thing focuses on one rather simple math problem. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, y'all, for providing that. Yes, the last sentence helped me get right into the prompt. Phenomenal. Y'all are subject matter experts when it comes to providing feedback, when it comes to the PIQs. So one takeaway that we want to provide today is AI is such a powerful tool at the disposal of all of our students. It provides quick and somewhat insightful feedback, understands the fundamentals of the writing prompts, and encourages to keep it personal to the student experience. While it didn't take its own advice, keep in mind, once again, AI is not an exact science. There's always going to be areas for improvement in responses, does not avoid all the common writing mistakes, such as scene setting, storytelling, or even providing specific numerical examples. More work goes into formulating a prompt rather than the response. So the more specific the prompt the student provides, the more specific AI will provide. And then also, as many of you touched upon, does not speak authentically on behalf of the student. So yes, it is a phenomenal tool, but at the end of the day, we want our students to formulate their own responses so they can truly share their life experiences. So phenomenal insight. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in that. Sweet. Alrighty, so now let's dive into the PIQs case studies. So we understand our case studies can be a little wordy. So in this QR code, we're providing you with all of the examples that you'll be seeing here today. Keep in mind, all the PIQs that are shared today are just one part of the holistic application review process. As my colleague Silali shared, it is one piece of the pie. So yes, there are going to be some insights that we're providing, such as an admissions decision as well to these case studies. And then the case studies are just one of the 4 that they responded to. Case studies have also been edited to protect students' information as well as identity. So a little bit of it has been tweaked, but the primary reason, not the primary reason, but the primary responses are still there. So without further ado, feel free to scan that QR code and we'll jump right in to our very first PIQ case study. Phenomenal. Sweet, sweet, sweet. So in question number 1, we asked, describe an example of leadership experience in which you have positively influenced others, helped resolve disputes, or contributed to group efforts over time. I'll give you about 2 minutes to review this response. And then if you have anything that sticks out to you, feel free to drop that into the chat as well. But in this, while you're reviewing this, I will provide some summary for it as well. So the student responds to question number 1, but they use this response to talk about Ronnie, a 12-year-old 6th grade boy who sat in the sidelines and refusing to play bump out basketball with the other boys. So in their response, they talk about how they positively impacted Ronnie's experience. Now, they also use a lot of quotations I want to share with you as well. They also include a very famous quote by Dr. Maya Angelou as well in their response. So at the end of the day, this student is talking about another student and how their actions positively influence their experience while working with them. So a very brief summary in that end. Feel free to kind of skim it through a little bit longer, but ask yourself in the chat as well, what stands out to you? Did they answer the question? Is it relevant to the student? What could have they done to improve this response and so forth? So these are just some quick guiding questions that we provide for all of you. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Great insight. I see one already focuses on someone else and all the quotes really make it clunky. Angelo quote is super cliche and mispunctuated. Phenomenal. Keep in mind, a little insight for all of you. While we do not check for grammar or spelling, we still encourage all of our students to put their best foot forward at the end of the day. Great insight. This PIQ feels so impersonal. There's no emotion attached to it and not enough specifics on how he made a big difference. Seems a little small. Not wanting to see storytelling. Phenomenal. Great, great insight. So continuing on, many of you have already touched upon these missed opportunities. Most of the response was used to talk about Ronnie instead of self, missed out on answering the question, and could have shared more of their own words instead of quotations. So great insight. Many of you already touched upon it. You, once again, are experts in guiding your students in this responses. Now, the next thing that we wanted to provide for these case studies is that these are actual students who applied this past application cycle. So one thing we wanted to provide you today is their admission decision. So can anyone guess what this student's admission decision was? Just very brief, without knowing the entire application, can anyone guess what it may be? Feel free to drop that into the chat as well. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Deny. Okay. Good, good, good. Anyone else? We'll get maybe one more kind of insight. Accepted, waitlisted, denied. Phenomenal. So if Salali can actually show us the actual decision, and this student was admitted. Great question, great insight. I actually wanted to touch upon that. Hard to know without more information. So keep in mind, these PIQs are just one part of the pie, and it's just one of 4 responses. So maybe this PIQ wasn't the best of the bunch, but there's different factors that went into the student's application review to provide that admitted decision. So great, great insight, folks. But yes, the student was admitted at the end of the day to UC Santa Barbara. We don't know where else they applied to, but they were admitted to UCSB. Next case study, please, Salali. Alrighty. So let's do case study number 2. Oh, the breakdown, yes. So we're actually answering question number 5. Describe the most significant challenge you have faced and the steps you have taken to overcome this challenge. How has this challenge affected your academic achievement? To help summarize this while you're still kind of skimming through it, keep in mind the student talks about how they were accepted into a Stanford University mathematics camp, some AC program for abstract algebra and number theory during the summer of their 10th grade. This student talks about what they kind of experienced during the summer camp and what they took away. More importantly, how did they develop as an individual, not only personally, but also academically as a student? The student talks about how they continued studying relevant concepts and equipped themselves with the necessary background for researching, vanishing, and reducing coursework, in mathematics and singular foliations. The program has equipped them with advanced mathematical knowledge, empowered them to conduct their own research, and boost their confidence and resolution towards their future mathematics journey. So when we consulted our admissions team or the high school admissions team, we talked about, well, what did this PIQ breakdown? But yes, phenomenal. Everyone's already providing a little bit more. Seems like they answered the PIQ on the educational opportunity. This essay feels more focused on showing off their academic talents. It did not answer the prompt, and the challenge seemed pretty small. Lists tons of details without actually answering the prompt, nothing how they overcame this challenge. Great question. What was your challenge? It did not answer the question, and too much about the program, not about them. Phenomenal. So once we consulted our team, we talked about, hey, this was a great response, but there also were a few missed opportunities. But when it comes to added value, this student used great use of acronyms. So they briefly shared the program very early on and provided that acronym. Answers somewhat of the question very early on and shared insight in how they grew from the experience towards the end. So those were just a few areas, but many of you already have that phenomenal eye of providing more feedback for the student or areas of improvement as well. So once again, with the knowledge just based off this PIQ, what does everyone think their admission decision was? Was it an admitted decision, a rejected, or a waitlisted? So we'll kind of see what everyone thinks in this response. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Perfect. We don't know enough to say. So some folks want a little bit more information. Phenomenal. Totally valid. Some folks are saying that the student was admitted. Phenomenal. So if Salali can provide, yes, the student was waitlisted. So just based off this PIQ, we can't know too much information. We need to know a little bit more into the actual application. But when we include all of that information, as well as this PIQ response, the student was eventually waitlisted to UC Santa Barbara. But once again, folks, it is just one piece of the pie, and we need to know more information before we provide that insight as well. But we just wanted to give you insight as well. Alrighty, so let's jump into our last and final case study of the day. So this case study is going to be answering question number 4. What would you say is your greatest talent or skill, and how have you developed and demonstrated that talent over time? Alrighty, so very quick summary. This case study talks a little bit more about how words have the power to connect others, as the student talks about poetry from their father first felt that connection. At 6, they asked to memorize and perform one of his poems in front of family. Despite their initial hesitation, they spent weeks laboring over this poem under a microphone and so forth. So once again, that scene setting, laboring over his poem until a microphone is handed into my trembling hand. Oh, absolutely. Sorry about that. Sweet. And then once again, folks, we are also providing a little bit more information towards that student's experience in high school. So feel free to provide that. Great. Perfect. Great question. A little too narrative, but ultimately nice evidence and detail. Phenomenal. Too much of a story. Nice. Sweet. Great insight, folks. Great insight. Sweet. Perfect. Alrighty. So once again, everyone has the PIQ case studies. See, a few folks are already sharing. Has a great potential, but too much narrative up front. Could use a little bit more effect/impact, and then a lot of story. But I like the use of my voice as a talent. Great examples, or good examples. Missed opportunity to speak about what poetry means to them. Great insight as well. Sweet. Alrighty. So most of you have already touched upon a little bit more information of what the student can do to kind of improve, what they did well, and so forth. So continuing on, let's talk about a little bit more about our breakdown for missed opportunities. Storytelling, instead of getting straight to the point, which many of you pointed out, tries to place the reader in the moment in many cases, and as well as jumps around instead of staying on topic. These are just a few notes that we've consulted with our admissions team for. And then once again, we are going to be providing an admissions decision. Without knowing too much, we wanted to provide that insight for all of our counselors here today. So breaking that down even further, the admission decision for this response was an admitted decision. So many of you would have guessed this already, and so forth. So this student was admitted to UCSB, but once again, folks, we need that additional context. We just can't make an admission decision based off just one PIQ response. So I do see a question very quickly into the chat, and I do want to address that because we've already touched upon that breakdown. Do UCs prefer getting straight to the point rather than building to the story? And this leads me into our next actual kind of response. So in the next question, in the next slide, our office actually created conversational guides. Many of you are going to be asked questions such as, does UCs prefer getting straight to the point rather than building to the story? For example, scene setting. Some students will ask, well, should I set the scene for my application reader? And our office will actually work to create what we like to call that conversational guide. Once again, does it answer the question? Is it relevant to what you're trying to say and so forth? And it kind of guides that student into one, rereading the question, or two, reformulating a response. We actually created 3 conversational guides of common questions that we received because my amazing and phenomenal colleague Lali was working with students prior to starting her role here in our office, and she did work on the other side of the table, just like many of you. So I'm going to leave it to her to kind of provide a little insight into what we're trying to create and provide for all of you counselors today.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, as Adam noticed, I was a college advisor last year, and I know sometimes it can be hard navigating the questions students might have and guiding them through some of the concerns they might have in terms of actually responding their prompts. Essentially, this is a resource for all of you. We have 4 guiding questions that students tend to ask. So one of them is, should I set the scene for my application reader? Very common question. We also touch a little bit about creative writing. So students often have questions about writing creatively and if this will enhance their application. So we kind of guide you through all of these different questions and how you can navigate this conversations with students as they are trying to figure out what they should or should not be writing about. And I will go ahead and leave you guys with a couple more resources. So here is our YouTube channel link. Like I stated, we will be uploading a recording of today's webinar onto our YouTube channel. And in that YouTube channel video, we will be leaving the link in the description. So feel free to check it out for the conversational guides. And then we also recommend you guys join our counselor mailing list if you aren't already. And if your students ever have any questions or concerns, they can go ahead and connect with their direct admissions counselors. So Adam noted his regions earlier on in the presentation. I will go ahead and verbalize my own. So I have Kern, Tulare, and San Bernardino County. So if any of your students are from there, that is who I am, their direct point of contact. I also have some of the LA County regions. It really just varies. LA County is very large, as we all know, so I kind of have the northeastern area, but some of my other colleagues have other parts of LA. And finally, we are going to be diving into the Q&A portion of today's presentation. So before we do that, I do want to point out some resources. We do have freshman virtual events happening for students if they would like to register for any of those. I know someone noted earlier in the chat box, in the Q&A box, if we were able to share resources with students. This is a great resource. They can sign up for webinars that are similar to the webinar we are doing for all of you counselors, but our webinars are also catered towards students as well if they would like to join us in the future. So nice little resource to share with them. And if you have any further questions after today's presentation, you could always email admissions@ucsb.edu.